Today on the MrMaple Show podcast, it's the Spring Interest Japanese Maple Collector's Corner Special.
Konnichiwa, y'all, and welcome to the MrMaple podcast. Guys, we love doing these collector's corners where we kind of give a different take and we talk about some of our favorite things in each category. With spring right around the corner, we thought we'd discuss some of our favorite spring interest plants in different categories. So we're going to be talking about some of our picks and discussing each other's picks for top spring interest plants. If you like this kind of thing, if you like Japanese maples, make sure to give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and sub to us on the MrMaple Show on YouTube.
Now, spring color on Japanese maples, it's one of the things that collectors, and I know I personally love, just waiting for those trees to leaf out and get that spring color in the early spring. Fall color can be inconsistent, but spring color is pretty consistent every year. And the spring interest Japanese maples are some of the most exciting ones in that springtime when you just get hit with some awesome color. And that's what we're talking about today. What we've done is, with most collectors' corners, we have a prompt, and then Matt and I choose a cultivar based on that prompt. For me, these may not be my favorite of each cultivar, but the first thing that I thought about when I was hit with that prompt.
Yeah, when spring comes around, we get that anticipation of spring as maple collectors. Conifers, it's just instant gratification all year. You don't lose leaf, but with maples, you got that anticipation. You got that
changes of the seasons.
Right. It's a little more romantic. There's a little buildup, right? There's something. There's a wait. You have to wait for spring to happen. Then there's a crescendo. There's this big spring is here. It's amazing all at once. Everything's awesome. That's the space we're living in here today. All right. What's your favorite red for spring, Tim?
I didn't choose my favorite red, but I chose the red that I thought about with spring interest, and that's Shin Sojo. In the early spring, you have this fire engine red color that is outrageous. On a large tree, you can just get some outrageous colors out there in the landscape and garden. You can brighten up your whole garden with a Shin Sojo. Just lighten it up in the early spring. It looks almost like it does in the fall, but in the springtime. And Shin, meaning improved, Sojo, meaning that red color. Classic one that's very popular for bonsai. It's an upright tree, typically reaching 10 to 12 feet in height in 10 years. It's pretty vigorous, pretty heat tolerant. But the color and the intensity of its color is what really drew me to Shin Sojo, because it's one of the more intense red colors you can get out of any tree.
Decent choice. I like it a lot. Great grower, very vigorous, a little bit more vigorous than DeSojo. Shin obviously meaning improved, a little bit different color than DeSojo too. Very popular for bonsai. Makes a great plant in landscape as well. Like, I think a lot of people hear DeSojo and they think bonsai. I've got a Shin DeSojo in my mom and dad's garden that's just knock your socks off every spring. Like, looks great in the landscape, fast grower. And spring, it literally glows. Like, it is on fire. That spring pink is hard to beat.
So, Matt, what did you choose?
I chose Red Panda because we're talking about red and it's springtime. I got a favorite, and it's the Panda that is red. It's hard to beat it in the spring. It's a bold red in the early spring. I think it's interesting on that Makawa form. When I'm thinking about looking forward to spring, that's one of the ones I can't wait to see every year. I love that color. It's kind of a picked up orange red. Just a fun plant. And again, it's a spring interest plant.
All right. Red Panda, awesome selection. It's one of the best red Makawa types. Love what Red Panda can do out there in the garden. For a small compact form, it definitely gives you some great red color. Y'all, next up, we've got variegated.
All right, so I picked Firefly. A lot of people know this Firefly is my favorite variegated plant, and it's my favorite variegated plant for spring too. I love this one in the early spring. I think it's very unique. Oftentimes you can get a little bit of like pink, almost apricot color going on in the leaf, especially if you're giving a little bit of sunlight in the early spring. I think it's one of those spring interest trees that changes every single week of spring. Like, every single week of spring, you're getting something a little bit different expressed in the variegation there. For me, my favorite variegated overall, very narrow footprint to it. I like that it's more columnar than a lot of the other reticulated forms. I like that it's a vigorous grower, but nothing really beats that for me in the spring.
Firefly is pretty spectacular. I mean, for the reticulated style, It's one of the best variegated reticulated style maples I've ever seen. One of my favorite variegated Japanese maples overall. And it's a good, strong grower, which is awesome. I ended up going with Uzun Nishiki.
It's a good choice.
Now, Uzun Nishiki is a different style variegation. It's kind of in that Arito Nishiki style, but you also get a little bit of a purple sort of nails to it when it first leaves out. So you get the purple nails. You get just a splotching variegation and a sand dust variegation in there as well. And it is one of the more striking variegated Japanese maples I've ever seen. And love it. I mean, it's completely different from that reticulated style. There's a lot of different styles of variegated Japanese maples. And I think it's real interesting to go into Veritree's book and read about all the different styles of variegation. But I think for like unique style variegation, Uzun Nishiki brings it.
Uzun's next level. I've got one right by my garage. I go out and check it out all the time. I love it. It's more multi-stemmed than a lot of the other upright forms. It's a little bit of everything all at once. Like it is everything. It's like you get the Arito style, but you also get a little Ukigumo going on with it at the same time. Just so next level of a plant. Absolutely love it. I think it's got some of the best like pink lavender colors as well for that style. So you get a real unique blending of colors going on. And spring, my gosh, the thing's hard to beat in the spring. It's so super next level.
Guys, our next prompt was yellow for spring interest. You know, you get all these colors out of spring interest Japanese maples, and so it's kind of fun going through here and sort of picking one from each category. And yellow is one of those colors that I just love out there in the landscape. I mean, it brings out all the other colors in the garden. And you hear me talking about it in almost every podcast or every time I get talking about yellow. But when I went with yellow, I went with Yellow Cascade, which is a butter yellow weeping selection by Buckholtz Nursery. And in that Ryusen kind of format, it's got a little bit larger leaf than other ones like Golden Falls and Dragon Master, a little bit larger leaf. But instead of having those oranges, you get more of that clear butter yellow.
Yeah, real soft yellow, real classic yellow. You want to give that one more late day shade protection. Gets about as big as you stake it. You know, I like to stake it up 5-6 feet tall, kind of let it weep down from there. Great in a container or even a hanging basket. Yellow Cascade, really nice choice. I mean, I love the yellows on that one. It is a softer yellow too, so it's a little bit less of the in-your-face neon, a little bit more that like you said, butter kind of yellow.
What do you go with the yellow, Matt?
Well, there could only be one, so I went with Hot Blonde because I named it. I love it. It's named for my wife. It's hard. I could not pick Hot Blonde, right? I think I get in trouble tonight if she hears this and I said Summer Gold. It's like, what's happening in the Nichols house now? I'm in trouble. No, I truly would pick Hot Blonde anyway. I think this is a great plant. Now, full disclosure, it can be a little greener when it first leaves out. Definitely has this pink outlier. I would say the first week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks of this tree, it's a little more green and pink. But then it hits that yellow flush and it just glows, especially if you've got it in some more sunlight. So it leaves out the first week, maybe week and a half. It's a little lighter green, but when it hits that yellow, there ain't nothing yellow like that one. I love that neon. You get more of that shiny glow to it. You almost get like a translucent color to it. I love that. Pink border to it really sets the yellow off. You can put this one in a good bit of sun. Now, it is a little bit of a trick here, too, because this one's late to leaf out. So it is one that's not going to be in early spring. There's a little bit more anticipation to this one, too. It's typically 2 weeks after most of our maples. So it's even on that later scale, I would put it a week after typically Tomukiyama and Emperor 1, which we consider late to leaf out. Hot Blonde can even be a week after that sometimes in my garden. Love it. I think it's interesting that it's a little later into the spring, but then it's still in the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's heat tolerant. It's vigorous. It gets out there quickly. Makes a big show of yellow out there in the landscape and great fall color. And in that summer time frame, in that spring time frame, those yellows that it can provide out there in the garden are some of the best yellows that you can have. And the fact that this is a yellow that can handle high heat is pretty awesome. I mean, something like the Yellow Cascade I was talking about, you typically want to give that some protection from the hot afternoon sun, where Hot Blonde is part of our Heat Seeker series. It literally seeks out the sun. It wants more sunlight in most climates. Awesome selection for a yellow.
All right, now we've got white. So there's some really interesting Japanese maples that exhibit, almost all white characteristic. We actually did a whole podcast on white Japanese maples, so go check that out. A lot of fun there. There's a lot of things to pick from here. I mean, there's things that aren't even out in the trade yet we're working on. I tried to go with something that people might know here, but it's a fun one. I went with Acer Pictum Naguri Nishiki. A lot of people have that in their top 5. One of my most consistently white plants in the spring. Like, it's a pictum. I think you get a lot of the same colors that you like with Ukigumo, but you get it a little bit more consistently. So it's every season it's back. Like I have several big ones of these in my garden, and they're just consistent. I mean, a lot of these are even a good bit of sunlight, and you're still getting that white glow in the spring. So it's really contrasting all the other colors.
I think we did Usugumo a disservice by doing a cultivar highlight in front of Niguri Nishiki. Because
don't worry, everybody buys this out of Usugumo immediately. I don't think there's any shortage of hype for Usugumo. What a disservice we did.
But everybody is commenting on the Usugumo video. They're saying, what is the white tree behind Usugumo? And it's Niguri Nishiki, because it stands out with that pure white color with a little bit dappled white, green in there.
No, Usugumo, what a dog.
But the batwing maples are awesome because those leaves are so much bigger. And Niguri Nishiki, it's just a next level tree. I know Mark Wethington went to Japan, was taking photos of Niguri Nishiki and saying, Tim, do you have that in the United States? This tree is next level. And I was like, yeah, we have it. And he was just, it's one of those trees that's just so beautiful when you see it. You don't see anything else quite like it. I mean, those big, huge leaves that are that white, it's pretty spectacular.
So Miss Universe, sorry, Usugumo runner-up. So don't even bother growing Usugumo. It was runner-up for Miss Universe. No, they're both great plants.
So,
what do you got?
For me, I went with Acer Platanoides Waldersii.
Switched off his paper.
I did.
You're cheating.
I did. On my paper, it says Waco Nishiki, but I'm going with Acer Platanoides Waldersii. I think this is a maple that is outstanding and white and underappreciated. It is a Norway maple with a huge Norway maple leaf. And in the springtime, you get that white color that is just outstanding.
I absolutely love the big leaves on this plant. I love the color of it. Those big leaves give it something super next level. Reticulated, almost like a Ghost series. Like you get a lot of that going on, but that pale creamy white, just something super cool about this plant, especially when it's starting to unfurl those leaves. Like it just gives you something next level.
It does. I know that there's a gorgeous one of these at Talon's house, and I just fell in love seeing just a big specimen of this. This is a tree that we will be doing our best to offer more and more at Mr. Maple, because I think it's underrated. And I think it's a white it's a white maple out there that more people need to be growing.
Technically cheated. See, it was a Norway maple. So it's still a maple. I'll allow it. So now we're moving on to purple. There's a lot of great spring purple Japanese maples. There's so much diversity there. Man, I had Waveleaf, but I'm calling an audible. I'm going with the artist formerly known as John Tavon. I don't know. But it's got a TU in it. It's from Australia. And I've been informed by our friends in Australia that this originated with that doesn't look anything like that in Australia. So that we need to put a new name on this. Maybe we'll encourage Talon Buckholtz to put a new name on it. So if you've formerly purchased John Tuvon from us at Mr. Maple, it may be getting a bit of a rename. But when I think about purple, I don't know anything that's that Barney purple, that crazy weird purple, like the artist formerly known as John Tavon.
As soon as you said purple, my mind went right to the artist formerly known as John Tuvon. And the reason it's not really a rename, what it is we got this tree. It's from Australia. It's an Australian selection, and it's not the tree that's in Australia. So it's not even really a rename. It's a...
We need to get it right, because there is a green out there named John Tuvon. So we have been asked to make sure that we're not mixing that one up in the trade. So we'll get a new name for the point of being the most accurate.
Exactly. And that thing is outrageous. I mean, it gives you some Barney purples in the spring.
I'm not calling it Barney.
Purple.
You can let us know in the comment sections if you know this tree, what you would name this tree.
Purple people eater?
We're not going with Prince either, because I hear his estate, like they're like really protective of anything with Prince rides. So ain't no purple rain happening here. Love the plant though. It is one of the craziest shades of lavender Barney purple. I mean, that's the goofy color of it, but it really is. When you hear that, you know what color you're seeing. It's a weird shade of purple, especially amongst broadleaf horticulture plants. Like you don't see that shade on Japanese maples.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty outrageous. It's a next level purple. And, originally I was going with the Magashiguri, but before we started this podcast, I marked it out and went with Earthfire. And Earthfire has that Matsumori leaf, more of a spreading out habit, but with a reticulated color. The same kind of color as a Magashiguri, but a different habit and a different style leaf. I mean, it has a shape that would make you think it was almost like a Kiyohime dwarf compact form.
Toadstool shape.
Yeah, and this has a Matsumori reticulated style. Earthfire next level selection. We've dropped it on Mr. Maple. We've dropped it on eBay. And it's one that we're going pretty heavy at here at Mr. Maple. It's really one of those Japanese maples that is a next level tree. I think many of the collectors will get really excited about.
I love it. It looks like a lace leaf purple ghost. I mean, it's crazy. It's like a lace leaf purple ghost with a shape like a kiyohime. Like, it's so nuts. I love it. It's funky. It looks perfect in a container. I think it's a perfect container plant. Like, you put that in a big patio planter that's got nice color to it, even a lightly colored or a contrasting colored patio planter, you got a whole garden right there. I mean, that's got all the contrast and interest you want. The spring color is electric. I've got a nice size one in my garden. Absolutely love it.
All right, next we've got the color pink. And on the color pink, I'm going with Nancy's Legacy. This is the reversion of Toyama Nishiki. Sometimes it has been called Toyama. Nancy Fears loved the reversion on it, and people started realizing how awesome this reversion was because it gives you everything you love about a lace leaf Japanese maple, but it gives you this pink color as well that you don't find on any of the other lace leaves. And so you get this sort of pink bronze unique color out there with that cascading umbrella habit. And then, that color on this is one of the better colors on a lace leaf spring interest. But then in the fall, you can get some really nice pink oranges.
Love it. I actually like Nancy's Legacy as much or better than the original. It's a great spring interest plant. I think one of the most ethical ways, if you have a plant that can revert, is to have a cultivar name for the reversion. I often encourage other nurseries to adopt this as well because you're going to have them to sell. And one of my least favorite things is when people take that and readapt it to a different name. So they'll take that and they'll say, this reversion of Toyama Nishiki, now we're going to call this, what does it look like? We're going to just stick ornatum on it. And it's not right. Like, it's not really that close to that. And so I think having a realistic right answer to what that can be called is also the most ethical way to grow it because you're telling the customer up front what it is. And it's also great traits. Like, we have people that ask for this to be grafted every year because they want exactly those traits. So I love it. I love what it is. I think it's the right way to go about doing that in an ethical way too. That way you're upfront with everybody about it too.
And Nancy's Legacy, it's an amazing tree.
Yeah,
I mean, it was one of Nancy Fear's favorite trees.
We actually brought a lot of trees from her back in the day when it was Dad. We were buying trees from her, 1990s.
Yeah, she ran Mountain Maples, and she had basically a mail order component of essentially a lot of J.D. Vertree's trees. She was one of the first people actually mail ordering Japanese maples. So a lot of collectors that are in their 70s and 80s, they were ordering a lot of trees from Mountain Maples, and it was actually often coming through Vertrees to Mountain Maples and then getting around in the trade.
Never got to meet her. She passed away kind of as we were getting into this, but really interesting lady. Great choice for a pink lace leaf. So I went with my favorite, most electric pink here. When I think about spring pink, a lot of things come to mind. Like Celebration's a good choice. There's so many dope choices. Nani Wabeni is hitting the market again. It's one we've been working on for a while. I absolutely love Nani Wabeni. That's my favorite spring pink. When I think of like quintessential pink Japanese maples, Nani Wabeni is what comes to mind for me. It's got a yellowish eye to it. It just hits. That one for me, it just does a little something extra. When I look at that one in the garden, it's like, whew, man, it just gives me a little something extra.
It's almost like you just turned up the color contrast on some of the other pink Japanese maples in the spring. Like if you have a regular Japanese maple that has pink interest and then you just turned up the color contrast, that's what the tree looks like in real life. And it's like DeSojo in that it can get a little greener midsummer and then there's new growth of that pink over it. But man, do I love this one. Yeah, it's one of the most intense colored pink Japanese maples out there in the trade today. Typically about 6 to 8 foot in 10 years. One you don't see much in the nursery trade, but we're going to be producing a lot at Mr. Maple. Now, many of these trees, if you're interested in purchasing these trees, we will be offering them on MrMaple.com. If they're currently sold out, you can go to the page on our website about this tree and then click Notify Me and plug in your email address, and we'll email you when the tree becomes available again.
All right, man. Next up, we got orange. What you got?
Orange. Orange, you glad I went first? I'm going with Marmalade. Y'all, Marmalade is one of Talon Buckholtz's introductions. It was found underneath Orange Dream at Buckholtz Nursery. there in the Floral Wonder Garden, he's got this ginormous Orange Dream. And this was a chance seedling that was underneath it. And it has just a multitude of orange colors that keep coming across it all throughout the year. But in the springtime, that's really when it shines. And it's some of the more intense oranges that I've seen on a Japanese maple.
One of the most next level oranges out there. I think that might be the brightest. I mean, that Naniwa Benny would just, that would be nuts, wouldn't it? Plant that next to a Naniwa Benny. I think you would, I think it'd be too much to handle, honestly. That might be color over sensory overload. I love Marmalade, highly sought after, one we're amping up numbers on. So that's one we're going to have available. Absolutely next level orange.
What do you go with for orange, Matt?
I went with Sunny. I love Sunny. Sure, solid, so you get that big leaf to it. Seedling from Jordan. So you get a lot of what you like about Jordan. But then in the spring, it actually exhibits a really nice, bold orange leaf on top of that Shirasawa kind of larger platform. So you get a lot of what you like about Jordan, but more of an orange glow to it in the early spring, which I think can be very next level and give a lot of good color contrast. It's a lot of what I want out of a Shirasawa growth-wise. It's vigorous. It gets out there. But yeah, spring color. Especially if you're giving this one a little more early morning sun, late day shade, you can really get to some of those pinnacle orange shades.
And it's one of those trees that has orange color, almost like a Katsura, but on a full moon style leaf. And the interesting thing about Sunny is that if you have it during the summer, if this was the summer list, it could fall under the yellows.
Yeah.
But in the springtime, this is an orange. I mean, it clearly has some amazing orange colors that are just outstanding. It's one of the best orange Japanese maples in the nursery and in the garden whenever it comes to any Japanese maple. And then the fact that it's got that full moon leaf too, that makes it awesome.
Absolutely love it. All right, so our next category, and my wife gets her fingernails done, and they're really expensive to get done all the time. And I got 2 daughters, and she was like, I'm thinking about taking our oldest, who's 8, to get her fingernails done. I was like, we can't start that yet. She's 8. Give me at least 3 more years. We got to make some more money at our nursery before I have 2 daughters. And then like Amy, I'm like, they all can't be getting their nails done. This is already $1 billion. We gotta grow the business before we can afford to put fingernails on our daughters too. What's your favorite spring interest fingernail type?
So this is fingernail type. We're talking about trees that exhibit that border in the early spring that is in that sumagaki type. I mean, sumagaki or sumabeni means like red fingernails. And in that line of thinking, I'm going with Spring Blast, which is a reticulated Japanese maple that also has that red border to it. And it's one of the thicker borders. I mean, First Ghost has a nice border in the early spring. Mm-hmm. Phantom Flame, a little bit thicker. The biggest border I've ever seen on a reticulated style is on Spring Blast. And you can get some really thick margins on this with strong white reticulation with green veins.
Yeah, you almost get a more pink red than lavender, which is different too, because like First Ghost and Phantom Flame, you get a little bit more of like a purple and lavender. I like that Spring Blast, you get a little bit more of like a pink red. So it's like a little different on the border color too.
It is. And that's one of the things I like about this selection. It's new. We will be offering quite a bit of them on Mr. Maple. If we haven't dropped them by the time this podcast airs, they're coming really soon to Mr. Maple. And to me, this is a great tree, typically reaching that 6 to 8 foot in 10 years kind of size. And not many people know about it yet, but it's an awesome new reticulated Japanese maple with some excellent spring interest.
That's a great choice, man. I went with another one from Australia. I went with Emerald Sunset. I love this plant. 6 to 7 foot tall, holds the border longer than a lot of the other ones. A little bit more flatter leaf as it gets unfurled. Leaf more like something like Osakazuki, so you get a little bit bigger leaf as well. I've had Richie, we met him at he's shopped with us for many years, but we met him in person last year at the Texas meetup. We got to go down and do a lot of stuff, singing its praises in Dallas, talking about how this one was doing so good in full sun in Dallas. I like it for its heat tolerance, but I love Emerald Sunset for its nuance in the spring. There's a lot of trees to pick from Kugane Sake, Sumagaki. There's a lot of outside the box with that purple border around them. But for me, I think the most refined, what I think of in the spring is the one that draws me in the most, is Emerald Sunset.
I mean, that's a great one. I mean, I think about the problems I have with Sumagaki is that it needs protection from the hot afternoon sun in most climates.
Mm-hmm. And now, I do think with Emerald Sunset, you'll hold the border longer with some late day shade.
Yeah, but morning sun
seems to be very heat tolerant.
But morning sun's definitely going to pick up that purple border to it, which it is extremely heat tolerant. And it's been the one of those fingernail types that holds that longer throughout the season than I've seen on any of those other styles.
I like the shape of the tree a lot too. I think it's a good mid-sized to small tree. Great in the container, young, but I mean, yeah, I just like it. Emerald Sunset seems to be one of my all-time favorites that I look forward to every spring. So next up, our category is multicolor. What you got, Tim?
I've got Munkawa Yetsubusa. And it is a Makawa type that is multicolored in the spring. It gives you a lot of what you love about Moonrise on those colors, where you get, some nice oranges, peaches, and sort of yellows, and they're all on one tree.
Bringing the heat.
And it does it on a Makawa Yetsubusa form. It's a tree that we're working hard to produce a lot here at Mr. Maple. So they are coming back really soon, but tight, dense, compact form. Mm-hmm. Next level, multicolored spring interest Japanese maple.
Now, the legend on this one goes that Keith Johansson bred Moonrise with Makawa Yetsubusa and got a perfect pairing between the two. Now, I'll give him this either way. He got the end result. Whether you could show your arithmetic or not, you got the right answer because he got those colors. Whether the arithmetic adds up or not, I don't know. You'd have to get a geneticist involved to figure that out. But I'll tell you what, he got the right answer, and it's a right answer for a winning puzzle right there because I love the colors on this. Absolutely next level. One we're producing a ton of. Our friend Carl Munn introduced Moonrise. So Munn 001 is the unpatented name, the actual cultivar name of Moonrise. A little bit of a play on Carl Munn's name with Munkawa Yetsubusa. Absolutely love it. Next level. I think it's right there in that tier of best Makawa types. I'll put it in there with Mayday, Red Panda, Japanese Princess. It's in that discussion with me. I love the colors.
So Matt, what did you choose for your multicolored?
So I went with a tree that I have planted about 2 feet away from my Munkawa in the garden. I've got a Munkawa in the garden. I also have an Acer palmatum Tamanishiki in the garden. So when I thought multicolor, I went, well, I'm going multicolor, yo. I'm going all in. So I went with my favorite pink on red style. This one is super next level in the spring. Big leaf. Huge leaf, actually. I mean, you get a leaf, more of that larger size with it, but you get these variegated splotches of pink that can I can get lost in it.
And when it first leaves out, it's like a brighter red color. Mm-hmm. And with that pink variegation, it's got that Aminum style leaf. That means it's got a leaf more like a bloodgood. And as it matures later on in the season, that leaf goes from being that brighter red to a darker red color. And the pink color actually intensifies up during the summer. The
contrast is nuts between that. You can get some white in the pink late in the season, but I think that pink on the darker color is probably the one of the bigger contrasting colors within a leaf. This one could also be on my Japanese Maples I hate list. You'll have to go watch that podcast because it's on my most loved list, but it's also on my most hated list because everybody asks me for this tree constantly. And I do have one in the ground. We do have it in production again. We do have it in production again at Buckholtz. We're summer grafting this one only to get only the best variegated sounds from this. So there is some practices you can take. Yana would say cultural practices to produce this one correctly. There are some things we can do as nurserymen to provide the best quality onesies. The problem with this plant is it does revert. So unless you're pruning this tree for color rather than shape, it is going to revert on you long term. That's why I put one in the ground right beside my Munkawa Yetsubusa. So I see it all the time. At about midsummer, I go out there, I let it leaf out in the spring, and I go, oh my gosh, that thing's nuts. And then as that growth kind of hardens off, I do go out and remove any of the all dark red branching. And that allows that tree to kind of maintain. Now, how often can you do that? I mean, what happens when this tree is 15 foot? I'm going to be too old to climb a ladder for that by the time anyway. It's a very interesting plant, but it is a tree that requires maintenance to be that interesting.
All right, y'all. That's an amazing selection, Tamanishiki. Love that color. Love the pink on red. It's one that I wish we could produce more of, but it's just got so many issues that it's going to take a while to be able to offer this and stabilize that variegation. Y'all, customer favorite is our next.
So we are offering it.
We will be offering it. Customer favorite is our next tagline we're working with. And for customer favorite, I chose Winoyama because in the springtime, they fly off the shelf. When people see Winoyama in the early spring, you get some really nice, just amazing oranges in the early spring, your traditional upright. And then right after that, you get some awesome, just really nice shades of yellow on a large tree. Winoyama is one of those trees out there that's the harbinger of spring. It's one of the very first trees to leaf out. And so I can't not do a podcast on spring interest and not mention Winnoyama.
It's a double negative, so you might could.
I know that's what I'm doing.
You might could not. Anyway, love Winnoyama. Again, one of those spring plants that just flies off the shelf. Tim said you do this a lot. You do this double. I can't not talk about this
Because I'm talking about it right now.
right. I love it though. Winnoyama, beautiful. Yeah, great looking plant. Love that orange hue you get to it. You get a lot of subtle yellows. You get a little bit of an orangey border that kind of darkens in the early spring. One of the best spring interests for sure. And one that in springtime, oh my gosh, that one hits.
All right, Matt, what do you have for customer favorite?
I went with one of the top sales products of the year. I mean, we did a whole podcast where you can go look at the top sales of 2024. We give you the whole behind the scenes. And then I went through the top sellers, but then I thought about what I think sells the most based on spring color. So I went with Geisha Gone Wild because I think Geisha Gone Wild, it's at one of the top sales items. I mean, it wasn't far down from the top, but it's also one of those ones that I think people buy based on that spring interest, that pink on red variegation. I actually love it for summer color too, but I think that pink on red is what draws people to this one, and it really makes it one of the more popular customer picks we do.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those just outrageous spring interest Japanese maples, but I think a lot of people buy it for that midsummer kind of color where it just gets this pink on red, but then you also start to get some white and green in there at the same time. It's very multicolored during the summer time frame. Customer pick though, I mean, it is one of our top selling spring interest trees because, I mean, it's one of those pink trees in the spring that you can have out there. It's really strong, got a good, strong upright form, can handle the sun a lot more than, many other variegated Japanese maples, which is really nice. I mean, there's a lot of variegated Japanese maples out there. You typically say, always give protection from the hot afternoon sun. And here in Western North Carolina, we've been able to grow it in full sun, and it's done well for us. It's an impressive tree.
I used to answer all the phones. Like I talk about that a lot. I used to have a customer that was just say to my phone is pink trees. Because every time they called, they're like, what do you got that's pink? So I had to rack my brain every week. Like, what do you got that's pink? Well, I got Naniwa Benny. And then next week, what do you got that's pink? Let me show you Geisha Gone Wild. Let me show you this. Only pink. So they were just saving the phones like pink trees is called. Let me see what I got. Geisha Gone Wild, hard to beat that for a pink.
All right, y'all. That was our Collector's Corner. If you've got different answers to these, put that in the live chat on YouTube. We've aired this exact same video with a video component and photos of many of these trees on our YouTube channel, the MrMaple Show. If you've got other ideas that you think we missed out on, we should have said, put that in the comment section. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you can tell Tim how he's wrong. Agree with all my picks because they're the right answers. We appreciate you tuning in today, guys. If you like this kind of content, you can support our channel by shopping on MrMaple.com. A lot of these plants will be coming back to Mr. Maple, even some of the crazy ones. We'll be bringing them back. So if you don't see it currently in stock, you can always sign up to get notified. We had new trees every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern on our website. A lot of these spring interest plants, get them ready now. Your spring will be amazing.
Thanks so much. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.